Hello, my friend, and welcome to another video. I got a question the other day about loops and copyright and how can we avoid some copyright issue when it comes down to using loops in our composition. Now, there are many libraries and many companies who supply loops for us composers in order to just create our tracks. When you sell music to a certain library, by the way, before I carry on, if you want to know about the libraries where I license my music, download my free guide, link in the description. When you upload music to certain libraries, there's always like a tick box that you have to tick at some point where it says that you have permission to use the loops and the samples. Pretty much have been clear, copyrighted, so you can use it on your compositions. And yes, to monetize your music. I mean, if you're going to compose music right now and license it and sell it somewhere, then you're going to most likely use samples and libraries and loops that are available to everybody, right? So these loops, not only you use them to make your music tracks, but as well you use them to monetize your music. Now, you can get into a lot of trouble when you get loops that are just out of the box and you just put them all together. And libraries will certainly just not accept your music, and you can even get banned from libraries, okay, or your whole account be completely deleted or canceled. What I mean by that is that there are certain loops that you can get. I mean, even on Logic, right? You can get like some loops that they will all work together as part of a composition, right? They're not all organized like that, but you can pretty much just put them together if you wanted to. I have shared here on the channel how I use Apple loops to compose my music tracks and how I edit them and how I just use certain elements. I don't grab or the whole package because it's quite boring. I mean, what's the point in making music if I'm just going to grab a box which is full of loops? And what I mean by that is that you have the drums, you have the bass, you have the piano, you have the guitars, and you have, like, I don't know, the strings or whatever. They all happen to be in the same key. They're all like pretty much like, it's like stems. That's how you have to think about it. So when you grab those music stems or music loops, if you will, and you put them all together, right? Because at times they have like the guitar parts all together. It's not just one guitar. It could be the guitar playing something, and then it could be like a melody on top of it, and that's just like one loop. When you grab all of these things and just recreate whatever is coming out of the box, then of course you can't do that. That's a lot of problems for you that as a composer, when you upload to a music library, you're going to get into a lot of trouble, and people are going to be able to tell, because people that are in music libraries, and now with AI that they can actually check your music like that, like in terms of organization and everything, they will probably detect certain things, when it comes down to you uploading music and trying to organize and dissect what type of music track this is. But loops, you're free to use the loops, I mean, if you're going to use music loops and samples and you're going to upload your music to Spotify, for example, you can use these loops, but you have to be very careful how you use them and make sure that you have the documentation as well, okay? Like, for example, I have uploaded something to Spotify quite recently, actually, and I got like a strike with one of the distributors. I joined a particular distributor, and they said like, well, yeah, some loops have been, they register like they've been copyrighted by, not by Apple loops, okay? Like they weren't saying like, hey, these loops are belonging to Apple loops or whatever else you got these loops from, but actually to another composer, to another artist. And I said, and obviously you can dispute this. You say like, well, I don't even know who this composer is or this artist is, and I'm not using their loops, right? I'm actually using Apple loops, and I'm using this other loops from this company, and I have the documentation. Like, hey, this is what Apple loops has on Logic. Like, these are royalty-free loops that you can actually use for your compositions, and they have been clear. And the same goes with the other loops and samples that I was using. I don't remember what company it was, but it was something that I purchased online. They have it very clear. This is a license for you to use these loops for your compositions. And they take it a step further. You can use it not only to monetize, but use it on YouTube, so you're completely safe. And that's the whole point. Now, my job as a composer is to grab those elements and use them in my composition, right? Those are just ingredients of the composition, not just get them out of the box. I mean, some samples or some loops, they come all together as a composition. They've just been divided in certain elements of the composition. You don't want to do that because it's boring. Well, I mean, what's the point, right? If you have like a box full of loops, maybe you want to use the trumpet of it, but you don't want to use the trumpet, the bass, and the drums and everything together because it's going to sound like the sample loop, right? Like the whole package. And some loops are just random. right? Like Apple loops. Some, they're just random loops, and I just grab from different genres. For example, I was showing a hip hop track, and I have like it's hip hop in the genre, the loops that I'm working with, but I will go to the jazz genre and grab some pianos in that genre, in jazz, and try to mix them up. And that's the beauty of working with loops, that you can grab certain loops which do not even belong in that genre and then just put them together. Some of the famous musicians, they got into trouble because they're using samples or loops from famous people, right? And they go to court for this thing because they use a section of these samples and everything. But when it comes down to hip hop, for example, everything has been created by looping particular drums or just grabbing certain things, or Daft Punk for that matter, I mean, there's so many people out there using loops, but obviously this is a different topic for a different video, by the way. I'm talking about stock music licensing here and royalty-free libraries, and how can you grab your own music. You're not going to go and grab, I don't know, a track from Madonna or U2 and sample a drum beat or something and then use it on your composition. I mean, I wouldn't do that, okay? And there's no need to do that, right? Like go to famous people and sample their music, even if it's just 5 seconds. I mean, I'm not going to get into that at all, and I'm not going to be talking about that here in the video. But in this video, I'm talking about just loops that you have access to, that you can just go to a website right now and get some samples and then use those loops, right? The same way that you can go now to Spitfire's audio and get some samples, right? They're not copyright. I mean, the whole point of that company even existing, or companies like that, is for us composers to actually compose music using those samples and those loops. And then we can actually sell that music or license that music. That's the whole point of these companies, right? But you have to use it wisely. You're not just gonna like out of the box and then just grab something and whack it and say, that's my composition. Like, well, it's not. It came with GarageBand and you just put them together all like that, and you didn't even edit it anything. You didn't even make it your own. And I think that's the fun part. The fun part is to grab all of these loops and then edit them, and then you do your own twist with it and try to make the whole loop or loops come to life. But you're not gonna get into trouble if you're not just out of the box loops like that, and like, hey, we can tell that you haven't composed anything, because that's the whole package, right? You just grab it, download it, and you just whack it in together. You didn't even put something on top of it. So you have to mix them. So don't be afraid of using loops, as long as you're actually composing your track with those loops and making it your own. You're gonna be fine. And just make sure that most of this, most of these libraries, they have a tick box. I mean, Audio Jungle has very clearly at the end, like make sure that all the loops and samples that are not yours have been cleared and they're royalty free in order for you to use, okay? So for example, I have released many loops over the years that I have given, for free inside my courses, and they're just free for you to use. You can use those loops. It's me playing the guitar, and you can just go off and run with them and then use them in your composition and monetize your tracks with those loops, So they're royalty free. They've been cleared by me because it's my own creation. But anyways, don't be afraid to use loops. Go and compose some music tracks. Stop watching this video. Just go and make some music with your loops and have fun. I'll see you in another video, my friend.